What's under your M116 or M117 timing cover? Today we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive because I know some of you have 560 or 420 SELs or 380s or 500s or 450s or 350s or 280 SE 3.5s. Anything that uses the 3.5, 3.8, 4.5, 4.2, 5 liter, 5.6 liter, or if you have an AMG car, possibly 6 liter or 5.4 liter M117 and M116 engines. Now, these engines hid their timing chain under a removable timing cover. This bottom part attaches to the oil pan. This top part attaches to the cylinder heads. But what's really important is what's behind this cover, because as we keep using our cars and putting more and more miles on them, there are some parts under this cover that are part of the timing chain system that can wear out. So we're going to take a look at what these parts are and where they're positioned. And, you know, eventually the day comes and everybody who has an M116 or M117 engine is going to have to pull their timing cover. And if you're wondering whether or not your Mercedes has one of these engines, well, if it's a single overhead cam V8 and it was built between 1970 and 1991, yeah, you do. Okay, so first rail we're going to talk about is the timing chain tensioner rail. And if you're looking at the timing cover, this is the driver's side, this is the passenger side. And on the passenger side here, where the timing chain comes up, there's going to be a plug in the front right about here that you can unscrew so that you can access your tensioner rail. And your tensioner rail fits through a hollow pin. It goes up through the timing cover and up through the cylinder head, and it goes a lot like this. This guy will wear out such that the plastic rail skin, which is replaceable depending on which version you have, some of them Mercedes doesn't supply the part for, but historically all of these had removable rail skin so you could keep the aluminum block. These tend to get a lot of wear because right about here in the cylinder head, you've got the chain tensioner putting pressure on this, and the bottom acts as a hinge. And so the chain, because the tensioner rail pushes the chain out at a convex angle, it's convex, it pushes outward. It causes the most wear as it comes up through here in the home stretch. Now, there's another rail, let's see how many of these things I can balance, that actually feeds the chain onto the tensioner rail from the crankshaft. And this guy sort of hugs the center, and it just slides on to two pins that are pushed into the engine block. And this is what's called the ascending lower rail. So the chain is going up and it's a lower rail, and this guy actually, when it wears out, this is probably one of the worst ones to change, because yes, you have to pull the whole timing cover. For this, you don't usually have to pull the timing cover unless this pin gets damaged or mangled. But this guy, there's no other way to do. And it will get really deep grooves in it. This is obviously a new part, but this thing will get really deep grooves in it, and the grooves will get so deep they'll actually knock the keepers off the timing chain if they get too deep. So if you have a very high mileage 420 or 560 SEL and you're worried that this thing may be so worn to the point that it has, you know, tractor tire grooves in it, run a camera down into your chain case to inspect it. And if that's the case, if you absolutely cannot get to it right away and you're putting a timing chain in, use the crushable diesel chain link that would be used on an OM 616, 617, 601, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But it needs to be crushable. It can't be held on with keepers, because the grooves or the ruts in a worn out ascending lower rail will knock the keepers right out, and you'll lose your master chain link and blow up your engine. Now we're going to look at another rail. This is called the descending rail, and the descending rail goes right about here, and its job, as the crankshaft pulley pulls the chain tight, is to keep the chain in line with the crankshaft sprocket. But because this is the unstressed side, this rail actually doesn't wear out very much. You may see a smidgen of wear on it, but usually it doesn't fail. And even though it has kind of a long tail, it is not known for breaking like the rails in the cylinder head. So last, on this point right here, also like a little finger, but not driven by the main timing chain, is the oil pump chain rail. All these engines have a separate chain for their oil pump. This means that if this little rail wears out, then it could possibly make the oil pump chain slack. I've never had an oil pump chain failure because it's a very, very short chain, and it has a mechanical spring. It's not hydraulically tensioned, and so there's usually never an issue with it. Now we're going to talk about some other stuff that goes in this timing cover. In these two O-ring grooves right here, you have the water passages from the pump. This is where your water pump bolts up. Number two, this duct right here, this is the chain case duct, but behind here, this is called the oil delivery duct, and right where these two bolts go, right here, is where your oil pump bolts up. And high pressure oil flows through this duct, and then there's a closing plug here. Never forget this closing plug. You'll dump all your oil out. There's a closing plug here, and then there's another closing plug here, which you also do not want to lose. And what you'll usually see is that if there's like an issue with the timing chain case or whatever, where you didn't seal it properly, you may lose oil pressure from this location. It could happen, but there are two other very important O-rings up here too for the water system, 1 and 2. Okay, 1 and 2. These little O-rings, you shouldn't forget about them. They are the cylinder head vent for the water routing or water cooling system routing in your M117 engine. So anyway, this is one of those things where, or these are some of those things where you could easily forget about them when you have a timing chain off. You really don't want to do that. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video on the timing chain cover. And if you found this video interesting or helpful, please like, share, and subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. And if you ever have to do this job, I strongly encourage you to get a factory service manual. So please do that. Anyway, we'll see each other. I will see you guys again in the future. Good luck working on your Mercedes V8. Even though it looks complicated.